lot of your performances, in all your different incarnations in different bands have been filmed and or recorded, but of course many were not. So are there any particularly memorable gigs that you wish had been recorded but weren't?
Boy.
From the hesitation, I'm guessing that there's no obvious one that comes to mind.
No obvious one. There were some really good bits in the Isle of Wight Festival in 1970, and it was obvious. Well, it wasn't ELP's first gig; it was her second gig, but it was basically to be known as the debut gig for the world. And at that particular time, the cameramen weren't prepared for what was going to happen. Somehow we were a last-minute introduction to the Isle of Wight Festival.
Yeah.
And of course all the cameramen were lined up ready to get Jimi Hendrix or The Who or Sly and the Family Stone, stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
And we were kind of stuck in, actually, as a last-minute addition. So I think most of the cameramen weren't informed until halfway through our set. I think they filmed the beginning. They got some of it. They got a bit of pictures at an exhibition, but there was a lot of other stuff there. But they'd switched their cameras off, and but then suddenly I think they realized that the audience were like really responding, and this is good. They better charge all their cameras up again. So
yeah,
that was it. But they lost a lot of gems there, you know.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, particularly because that was a concert and a performance that was meant to be filmed. And it's not like you had a magical night at some gig and said, "Gosh, it's too bad there were no cameras there." The cameras were there; they just dropped the ball.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about gigs, there's a particular gig I want to bring up because it involves a mutual friend of ours. Let me see how few clues you can get this one in. I'll start with the date of the performance, which was June 30th, 2009. Is that enough? Probably not.
June 30th, 2009. Why should that be significant?
The venue was Wembley Arena.
Oh, my God, with Spinal Tap.
Spinal Tap. And the third clue was the band you sat in with was on their one-night-only world tour. And,
one-night-only tour.
And it was called the one-night-only world tour. They had one gig, and it was their world tour.
They are such great guys. And, of course, C.J. Vanston, I'm great friends with.
Exactly why I brought it up, yeah.
Yeah, he's obviously very significant in the whole scheme of things for getting me involved. I can't quite remember how it went. Harry Shearer, I think, possibly, whether he contacted me through through C.J. Vanston or how it came about. But I remember it was Mark Bonilla, because he knows all those guys. He knows C.J. Vanston.
Yeah.
And for some reason, C.J. wanted me to play on Spinal Tap's new album, Back from the Dead.
Yeah, that's it. Heavy Duty?
Heavy Duty.
Yeah.
And so they wanted apparently like a heavy hammered organ part. So I sort of went to town on it, switched the organ on and off, and so it was really funny. So that I happened to go to England when they actually played Wembley.
Right.
So I said, "Hey, I'm actually in England. Can I sit in?" And they went, "Oh shit, yes." You know. So I found an old Hammond. Well, actually, a good friend of mine, Tom Zachary, loaned me his Hammond, and so I, couldn't help but to do the original organ destruction routine.
I'm sure the audience expected no less, particularly at a Spinal Tap gig.
Oh, that's right. It was really funny, except when it got to the end, after I played the solo, and I'd stuck knives in the organ, I lifted the organ up to get feedback from the speaker, and literally threw the organ, and it narrowly missed crushing Harry Shearer's legs.
Yikes.
I don't think he was that happy about it, actually, at that particular time. But,
No.
but if you look at the video, which I've since, he threw a towel at me as he walked off stage, almost disgusted.
Yeah.
Now, whether this was an act or whether he was really thoroughly pissed off.
Well, he was in character, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what I looked at.
Right.
Yeah, he was in character, but I've certainly had no retributions from him at all.
Well, you got the better end of that deal if he threw a towel at you and you threw an organ at him.
Well, I threw the organ at him first, so he had a right to throw a towel at me.
Right. Well, you get my point. I'd rather get hit with a towel than an organ.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Well, you know, even though he's worked with just about every elite musician on the planet at this point, I know that CJ, he views you in an entirely separate category. He has a very profound respect and admiration for your body of work and your contributions not only to music generally, but to keyboard players like himself specifically. And he calls you the Jimi Hendrix of keyboards, which I find ironic because I've always cited Jimmy as the Keith Emerson of guitars.
I can't play guitar, particularly left-handedly.
It just means you represent to keyboard players what Jimi Hendrix meant to guitar players, which was, presenting the instrument in a whole new way, and everybody had to follow if they wanted to keep up. In 2004, you published an autobiography called Pictures of an Exhibitionist, and there's currently a documentary film in production with that same title. Jason Woodford is directing the film, and I understand his father, David Woodford, is someone you've known for quite some time, so it must be reassuring knowing that your story is in the hands of people who you know and trust. What can you tell us about that film?
Well, of course, David and I don't think I've known a person as long as what I've known David, because we were at school together. Possibly the first best friend I hung out with. Not that I hung out with many friends, but it was quite a surprise to me to learn that he'd moved from England up to Canada.
Yeah. And
was quite ensconced. And he had a son, Jason, very talented son, who was, winning awards in short films and stuff like that. And I guess David had got hold of my autobiography, and with his son's success in short films, and also with overseeing the film festivals, which they do up in there in Okanagan. I hope I spelled that right.
Is it British
Or
Columbia?
said that right. Pronounced it right. Okanagan Festival, I think. But Jason oversaw all that, and his father oversaw what was going on. And I was very intrigued when they said, well, we're going to interview all the people in your book, and we think we can make a movie out of it. So I thought, wow, that's a good idea. So, I mean, at the very beginning, I didn't have really much to do with it, except I thought it'd be really good fun,
Yeah.
Let's try and find these people. And it was just before my mother went into her dementia.
Yeah.
And so she was filmed, and school friends and schoolmates and musicians and things like that. There's no doubt about it that Jason has filmed quite a lot of valuable footage, actually, and I also, in turn, I've offered a lot of archive stuff from when I was recording it in Sussex, and stuff that nobody else has really seen, or nobody else has seen. A lot of solo piano stuff, a lot of me playing with the original jazz trio, which I had going in 1961 or something. Stuff of me like in the 50s. It's very good. And at the moment, I think there's about 6 or 7 hours of footage, which really needs to be put into some sort of sequence that the viewer will look at it, even though he's not a fan and they don't know who the hell Keith Emerson is, can go, wow, this is really entertaining, you know.
Sure. Well, Keith, I've been a great admirer of yours for many years, as have my listeners. So on their behalf, as well as my own, I want to thank you for taking the time out to speak with me. It's been a rare privilege, and of course, you're welcome back anytime.
Well, thank you very much, Dan.
I want to take a minute to acknowledge Andrew Green, who is the administrator of the Emerson, Lake and Palmer Appreciation Group on Facebook. It's a great place to connect with other ELP fans, as well as a great resource for rare content. So if you're a Facebook user, I encourage you to check it out. The name again is the Emerson, Lake and Palmer Appreciation Group. Once again, I'd like to thank Keith Emerson, Mark Bonilla, Jason Woodford, C.J. Vanston, and Andrew Green. Extra special thanks to David Woodford for his assistance arranging the interview. Thank you for listening. Now we're going to go out with yet another fine example of the genius that is Keith Emerson. This is an excerpt from the CD ELP Live in California, 1974. They call it Piano Improvisations, but I call it Keith the Jazzer. So long, everybody.